Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. Subscribe to this channel right now and do not skip a single second of what we are about to share with you, because this story has layers that go so deep and carry so much emotional weight that by the time we are finished you are going to feel something you did not expect to feel watching a tennis video today. Jessica Pegula just won the WTA Dubai Open, one of the finest victories of her career on one of the biggest stages available to her. She had every right to stand in that spotlight and make it entirely about herself, about the hard work, the sacrifices, the journey that brought her to this moment. And instead, the very first thing she chose to do with that platform was turn the conversation toward someone else. Someone she believes has been wronged. Someone she believes the sport has failed. Someone she watches week after week fill arenas that established champions cannot fill, build a fan base that transcends borders and demographics and conventional tennis audiences, and still receive scheduling assignments that communicate something deeply uncomfortable about how the institution that governs this sport views her place within it. Jessica Pegula used her Dubai trophy to go to bat for Eala. And what she said is going to echo through the tennis world for a very long time. Let us start with the moment itself, because the context of when these words were spoken matters as much as the words themselves. Pegula had just done something extraordinary. She had won a WTA 1000 title, a prestigious, grueling, competitive tournament featuring some of the best players on the planet, and she was standing in the spotlight that elite athletic achievement earns. Cameras trained on her. Microphones in front of her. The attention of the tennis world directed at her and her alone. And she used it not to consolidate that spotlight but to redirect it. She talked about Eala. She talked about the crowds Eala draws. She talked about what she personally witnessed when she faced Eala at the Miami Open, an experience she described with a specific and genuine astonishment that could not be performed or manufactured. She said it was insane. She said she walked into that match without fully understanding what she was walking into, that the atmosphere that greeted her was unlike anything she had encountered, and that standing on the same court as Eala in that environment made her realize something that the WTA's scheduling decisions seem stubbornly committed to ignoring, that this young woman from the Philippines has already built something that most established tennis stars spend entire careers trying to build and never quite. The Miami story is worth dwelling on, because Pegula's first-hand account of it adds a dimension to the numbers and the highlights that raw statistics cannot capture. She is a player who grew up in Miami. She knows those courts. She knows those crowds. She knows what it feels like to be the home player in that environment. And she walked into a match against a young Filipino woman ranked well outside the top 30 at the time and found herself on the road. Completely, overwhelmingly, unmistakably on the road. She said the crowd was entirely against her and her reaction in the moment was genuine bewilderment. Where did these people come from? She was not complaining. She was marveling. She was recognizing, with the specific clarity of someone who experienced it from the inside of a professional match, that what Eala generates in American tennis venues carries a power and a scale that the WTA's official hierarchy has not yet figured out how to properly acknowledge or accommodate. And that gap between what Eala delivers commercially and culturally and what the institution has offered her in return is the central crisis at the heart of Pegula's remarks. She was specific and she was pointed. She talked about the Australian Open. She talked about the fans who had traveled from across Asia, from the Philippines and beyond, who had come specifically and solely because Eala was competing. She described what those fans encountered when they arrived: queues that stretched around the stadium, crowds wrapped around the venue trying to find a way in, people who had spent significant money and made significant personal sacrifices for the experience of watching their player compete. And she said what happened to those fans was disrespectful. Not a scheduling oversight. Not an administrative miscalculation that anyone could reasonably excuse as the product of innocent logistical complexity. Disrespect. A word chosen deliberately by a player who has direct experience with the environment she is describing and who is not in the habit of using strong language carelessly. The specific detail that Pegula revealed, and this is the part that should have been the headline of every major tennis publication the moment she said it, is that she had been told the Australian Open had witnessed its best crowd in recent memory, and that this record-breaking, historically significant turnout was driven in substantial part by the presence of Eala, the best crowd the tournament had seen. And the player most responsible for generating that extraordinary atmosphere was placed on one of the smaller courts available on the grounds. That sentence does not contain ambiguity or nuance that softens it with further examination. It becomes more difficult to explain away the longer you look at it. You do not put your biggest crowd draw on a small court by accident when you have already been told, explicitly in advance, that this player is going to bring the biggest audience the tournament has seen. You make a choice. And the choice that was made communicated something to Eala and to the millions of people watching her journey with passionate investment about how the institution views her place in the hierarchy of this sport. Pegula's voice in this conversation carries particular weight because she is not speaking from the outside. She is not a commentator or a fan account or a journalist interpreting events through second-hand information. She is a player who competes in the same tournaments, who has been in the same draw, who has felt the energy in the same arenas, and who played against Eala herself and experienced the specific atmosphere that performance generates from the only perspective that matters in professional sport, standing on the court opposite her while a crowd that had no interest in Pegula's success was making its allegiances unmistakably clear. That experience, Pegula suggests, should be enough to tell any tournament director everything they need to know about what stage this player belongs on. And the fact that the Australian Open's response to that information was a smaller court is the detail she finds genuinely and publicly unacceptable. Novak Djokovic's decision to add his voice to this conversation elevates it further, and the significance of that choice cannot be understated. 24 Grand Slam titles. Arguably the most accomplished professional tennis player in the history of the sport. A man who has navigated every dimension of professional tennis from the inside, who understands its politics and its business and its institutional dynamics as well as any human alive. He called Eala the greatest tennis player the Philippines has ever produced. He said she deserves all the respect in the world. And he agreed that the court assignment and scheduling decisions made around her have contributed to difficulties she should not have had to face. When Djokovic says something in the tennis world, the weight of his reputation and his track record ensures that the room cannot simply absorb it and move on. His intervention, combined with the specificity and passion of Pegula's championship platform remarks, creates a moment that the WTA cannot explain away, redirect with a communication strategy, or allow to quietly fade from the news cycle without addressing in some substantive and visible way. The officiating incidents that have surrounded Eala's matches deserve acknowledgement here as part of the broader pattern that Pegula and Djokovic are both gesturing toward, even if neither named them explicitly. The qualifier match where a clearly in ball was called out and officials ordered a replay rather than correcting the call. The moment during her match against Swiatek, one of the most dominant players the women's game has produced in recent years, when an official chose to approach her about items in her bag at precisely the moment she was building momentum against the world's best player. Each of these incidents in isolation might carry an innocent explanation. In the context of everything else, the small courts, the crowds turned away at the door, the scheduling decisions that seem to consistently undervalue what she delivers, the pattern becomes more difficult to dismiss as coincidence. And the players who have been in those environments with her are beginning to say so publicly. What makes all of this ultimately inspiring rather than simply enraging is the specific and observable reality of how Eala has responded to every single obstacle placed in front of her. She addressed the questionable qualifier ruling by walking directly to the chair umpire, saying clearly what she believed was happening, and then returning to the baseline and winning the match. She responded to the Dubai quarterfinal loss by sitting in the press conference and saying with complete honesty and zero deflection that the gas tank was empty, no excuses, no misdirection, pure accountability and self-awareness that most players twice her age have not fully developed. She has become, paradoxically, larger and more compelling and more commercially significant with every scheduling slight and every questionable call. The institution's apparent reluctance to give her the stage she has earned has not diminished her. It has amplified her, because every time the story of that reluctance gets told alongside the story of what she has accomplished despite it, The contrast makes her achievements more extraordinary and her supporters more invested. Jessica Pegula won the Dubai Open and used her platform to say what needed to be said. Djokovic has added his voice. The fans who traveled thousands of miles and stood in queues that never moved fast enough have already said it in the most powerful language available to them. With their presence, their passion, and their unwillingness to stop showing up regardless of how the institution accommodates or fails to accommodate them. Eala is heading to Indian Wells and Miami as a seeded player ranked 32 in the world, the highest ranking any Filipino tennis player has ever achieved, walking into the two biggest non-Grand Slam events on the calendar with momentum, confidence, a crowd waiting for her in California and Florida, and the growing chorus of the sport's most respected voices in her corner. The WTA can keep putting her on small courts. But there is nothing small about Eala. And the world is running out of patience for the institutional failure to recognize that. Drop your most passionate thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Jessica Pegula speaking out at a championship ceremony will finally force the WTA to make meaningful changes? Are you more inspired or more furious hearing about what those fans experienced outside the Australian Open Stadium? And do you believe the American swing is where Eala finally gets the stage she deserves? Smash that like button to push this story to everyone who needs to hear it, subscribe to this channel for every update on this extraordinary journey, and share this video because this conversation deserves to be as loud as possible. Laban Alex, the movement is only getting bigger.